What's going on, Fourth and Mitch's podcast listeners? You got Kev and Stevie P. What's going on, Kev?
What's up, Stevie P? What's going on, everybody out there? Continuing our rankings on this podcast, we're going to go from with our running backs and receivers. We did quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses and all that good stuff the other day. So today we're going to continue with it.
Yes, sir. So we're going to start with the running backs. I'll just give my ranks. Kev will give his, and then we'll talk about the guys we want to talk about. We do have Thursday names in here because we did this podcast the other day. So we actually included Thursday night people, like we told you we were going to do that the other day. So I started my rankings off with Zeke. I got Le'Veon Bell, LaShawn McCoy, Leonard Fournette, which is somebody I marked that I want to talk about. I got Hunt. I got Ingram. I got Freeman at 7. Then 8, I got Ajayi. I got Gurley at 9. McCaffrey at 10. Carlos Hyde at 11. I have Derrick Henry at 12. I have Alvin Kamara at 13. Tevin Coleman at 14. Ty Montgomery at 15. Doug Martin at 16. AP at 17. Chris Thompson at 18. Joe Mixon at 19. Marshawn Lynch at 20. I got Frank Gore at 21. I got Isaiah Crowell at 22. I have Aaron Jones at 23. And I have Dion Lewis to wrap it up at 24.
Okay. All right. Give me a second here. All right. Number 1, I have... Jesus, man. I gotta... Oh, give me a second.
Yeah, no
I'm
problem.
working off a picture here, everybody, so you gotta work with me. Trying to... All right. Number 1, I have Devontae Freeman. Number 2, I have Ezekiel Elliott. Number 3, I have Le'Veon Bell. Number 4, I have Kareem Hunt. Number 5, I have Jay Ajayi. Number 6, I have Leonard Fournette. Number 7, I have Todd Gurley. Number 8, LaShawn McCoy. Number 9, Jerick McKinnon. Number 10, T.J. Anderson. Number 11, Melvin Gordon. Number 12, I have Adrian Peterson. Number 13, I have Mark Ingram. Number 14, I have Jordan Howard. 15, Doug Martin. 16, Carlos Hyde. 17, Christian McCaffrey. 18, Derrick Henry. 19, Joe Mixon. 20, I have Alvin Kamara. 21, I have Tevin Coleman. 22, I had Frank Gore. 23, I have Dion Lewis. 23, I had Dion Lewis, and 24, I had Marshawn Lynch, which obviously was terrible. So, I thought Lynch was going to be able to do it. I thought they were going to pound the Lynch a little bit more. I'm kind of done off the Marshawn Lynch bandwagon officially now. So,
I hear that. Yeah, I had him at 20. We told you guys the other day that I was basically done with him, but the reason I put him at 20, honestly, was I kind of thought, maybe he'd score a touchdown in that game. So, and he got thrown out literally 4 minutes into the game. So it was, one of those stupid, he shouldn't have done what he did, but it is what it is. Can't change it now.
And he's suspended for a game, so.
Yes, he is. So you don't even have to worry about playing him next week.
Yeah.
So the guys that I kind of marked here, Leonard Fournette, I want to talk about real quick. He might actually not play in this game. He's saying that he's definitely going to, but you can't take a player's word. They'll always tell you that they're going to play. So from what I understand, the team thinks that he's going to be able to go, but he's going to be a game time decision. So if you have the ability, make sure you have make sure you have the backup, to put him in there because Chris Ivory is actually not a bad player, and if Fournette is out, you're gonna have to start somebody.
You have the Colts this week too, so it's a good matchup.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, the Colts have been a little bit it's a little bit deceiving because we're so used to how bad the Colts have been in past years at rush defense, but they're actually ranked 6th this year so far. So, it's not the easiest of matchups, but it's not the hardest of matchups either. So,
my only thing with those kind of things is just you never game script kind of influences a lot of those yards and stuff like that. So. It might be 6, but that might be also because teams have been passing on them like crazy. Just game script also, affects that a lot.
Yeah, if you're going by fantasy points, they're actually ranked 30th. But actual rush defense in the league, they're ranked 6th. They're ranked 30th because they've given up, some multiple touchdown games to different players they've faced up against. But Chris Ivory could be a good start if Fournette sits.
Well, I'm going to go into my number one guy, which is Devontae Freeman this week. Atlanta's going through a lot of scrutiny because, first off, the Super Bowl was the perfect example. They were up, 50 points in the friggin' game and just decided they wanted to continue to pour it on and pass the ball, and it wound up hurting them and allowed New England to come back in the game. And basically last week was similar. Last week Devontae Freeman had a really good first half, and they just went away from him in the second half, and it wound up costing them the game. They allowed Miami to get back into it and eventually win. I think that this week, Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman are both playable as top two running, as a number 1 and 2 running back in your lineup. If you had them on the same team, I wouldn't even be against playing both of them, depending on who your other options are. Because I think both of them get a lot of workload this week. Based on, like I said, the scrutiny that Atlanta's going through, they're both very good players, very solid players. Devontae Freeman, I think, is a stud. So that's where Devontae Freeman ranks number 1. Why Devontae Freeman ranks number 1 for me is because I think the workload is just going to be there this week because of the scrutiny, and it's basically what Atlanta has to do in order to keep themselves in these games, or not keep themselves in these games, but kind of, finish the game. They seem to be a team that can get up on you, and the second half comes, defenses adjust to what you're doing, and Atlanta does not. And therefore, second half, their offense becomes stagnant, and it allows teams to come back. I think that the way they affect that is by giving Freeman the ball a little bit more. So I like Devontae Freeman as the number 1 running back this week. And it's a good matchup with New England.
I hear that. So me personally, I have Freeman at 7. I also have Coleman at 14. So, they're both. I got Freeman as a RB1 and Coleman as a very high end RB2. So I agree.
I agree. Like I said, I'm not even against playing both of them. If you have them both in your lineup, and maybe your running back situation is a little shaky, I could definitely play both of them this week, I feel.
I hear that. All right, so the next guy I want to talk about is Mark Ingram. I have him ranked at 6th this week. I love Mark Ingram this week. Going up against Green Bay, it's one of the highest over-unders from Vegas this week. It's actually supposed to be a rainy game. So I think that could affect where I have Breeze, honestly. I think I would drop down Breeze and also drop down Michael Thomas from where I have them ranked as of this moment, just because it seems like it's going to be a rainy day in Green Bay. And if that's the case, I could see Mark Ingram having a really big game. So I actually might even move him up over Leonard Fournette, if I had to do him over again. But I like Mark Ingram this weekend. We saw the workload he got last week. I don't think that changes this week, especially in the rain. So, it's a game that I definitely am on, and it should be interesting.
Oh, excuse me. I actually have Mark Ingram, I believe, at 13. And that was, I did these rankings pretty pre-weather forecast, so I did not even know it was going to be a rainy game. But definitely, if the weather influences the offense, I definitely can see Ingram getting a little bit more workload. I just I was down a little bit more on Mark Ingram, mainly because I think that Drew Brees is just going to throw all over Green Bay in this game because of the cornerback situation. But I definitely, if the weather is going to be that bad, it may cause for a lot more the running game to be a little bit heavier. So that might do a lot for Aaron Jones as well. I heard you had him in your top, your top 24. So, and I did not. So
yeah.
That might help him out a lot as well.
Yeah.
The next guy I want to talk about is Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon has been a beast. He's been a beast in the last couple of weeks since taking over for the injured Dalvin Cook. This week they play Baltimore. Baltimore after week 1 seemed like they forgot how to play football. It's they've just been basically getting torn up. It's not a typical Baltimore team, and the defense isn't very good, the offense isn't very good, and therefore the team isn't very good. So, due to the matchup, I think that McKinnon is a very good play. I actually have him, I believe, at number. I believe I had him at number 9 or 10. I have him at number 9. So, yeah, I believe Jerick McKinnon is a top 10 running back play this week.
I hear that. Actually, I didn't rank him in my top 24 this week. I think that game is going to be really low scoring. I just have the feeling that game is not going to really go off. Especially no Stephon Diggs. Really the position that's hurt Baltimore the most has been the tight end this year. So I could see Kyle Rudolph, doing his thing in this game. But really, other than that, I'm not too on too many guys from this game. I could definitely see I think the Vegas total on this game was 38.5 or 37.5. So they also seem to think it's not going to be very high scoring. And if that's the case, I think I'm a little bit down on really every offensive player in that game. But my next guy I want to talk about is Ty Montgomery. Ty Montgomery last week split the workload with Aaron Jones. I think that's going to be something similar this week. The thing about Ty Montgomery, where I have him at 15, is New Orleans is one of those teams that gives up a lot of points to pass-catching running backs, and Ty Montgomery is the pass-catching running back for that team. So I could see Ty Montgomery having, anywhere from 4 to 8 catches and possibly, breaking off a long screen pass for, maybe 30, 40 yards and a touchdown. So I'll take the upside of a rainy game with some screen passes going on, trying to get the ball out of Brent Huntley's hands rather quickly. And I could definitely see, Ty Montgomery being used that way a lot in this game. So I like Ty Montgomery this week.
I agree, actually, with you on that one, Steve. I think that, with Huntley being in there, they're going to have to do a lot. They're going to be a lot more checkdowns. And that's going to open it up for Montgomery to receive a lot of catches. So I'm kind of with you. I believe that Ty Montgomery is a top 24 play, definitely. I don't know where you had him number-wise, but... Yeah,
I actually had him 15.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I believe he is a running back, too, as well. The next guy I want to talk about is Derrick Henry. I have Derrick Henry at 18, mainly because I think that he's going to have a little more workload. Right now, I don't know what's going to happen with DeMarco Murray. He practiced limited on Friday, and that was his only practice all week. He's a game-time decision. Frankly, watching the game on Monday, it looked like Murray was their starter and got some work in the early downs, but once he they showed him on the sideline, he was stretching out his hamstring. It just seemed like after that, they kind of went with Derrick Henry as their first and second down guy, and Murray seemed to slip into the third down role. I honestly could see Derrick Henry just taking that first down and second down role over until Murray gets healthy. And if Murray winds up playing, he's probably just going to be a third down guy because it doesn't seem like they really like using Henry in passing down situations. So if Henry's going to be getting, the first, second down workload for a team that, likes to run the ball, I can see Henry getting, 15 to 20 carries. And if that's the case, he's definitely a top 20 play.
I agree. I have Derrick Henry at 12, and we did these ranks on Thursday. So I don't think DeMarco Murray is going to play in this game. I think they are going to sit him. There's no point, I think Indy is a winnable matchup. I think they kind of know.
It's Cleveland.
I'm sorry, Cleveland. I think Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland is a winnable matchup, and they know they can win that game without DeMarco Murray. So I think not to put him in any more risk than he already is of having a further injury. I think they are gonna go with the young guy in Derrick Henry, and I can see him getting 20 plus touches in this game. And if you watched him last week, I was kind of surprised how good he catches the ball. He kind of, I wouldn't say he's a pass catching back, but when they threw him a couple of passes last week, he did catch them and look, he didn't look stone handed. I mean, kind of corralled them in and, ran up, turned up field rather quickly, which is something that I like to see out of Derrick Henry, especially because I think next year he could be the guy. And, if that's the case, I think they're going to want to see what he can do. So I like Derrick Henry a lot in this game. Yeah,
I am a DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry owner, and I actually hope that Murray's out. This situation is almost kind of getting annoying, where it's, you don't know who's going to play. Both guys are talented. And, you'd rather see one guy getting 20 carries and the other guy getting, 7 or 8, rather than one guy getting, 16, the other guy getting 13. So, given the situation, I would kind of rather see DeMarco Murray out if I was one of those owners, just so I know that I could play, Derrick Henry with full confidence. It just seems like some of these teams now, whether it's New Orleans with Ingram and Kamara, whether it's Atlanta with Freeman and Coleman, or Tennessee with, Henry and Murray, it just seems like some of these teams you may be able to start both running backs if you were in a dire situation. You drafted one to be your handcuff, and honestly, both guys are wind up being more productive than, say, right now, like if you kind of went DeMarco Murray early, and then maybe your second running back was, Paul Perkins, you drafted late, who's now hurt, or somebody like that, where, you kind of went with, a high-end running back early, and then just said, forget it until like the 6th or 7th round. But, I think that, some of these teams are starting to show that you can actually play both of their running backs, and, both guys will be productive.
I hear that. So the last guy I actually want to talk about is Dion Lewis. I ranked him 24. If you guys have noticed, I've ranked the New England running back in the top 24 at 24 every week so far this season. So, and the reason I've been doing that is because I think the guy that gets the touches there is valuable. I mean, he's definitely an RB2, but the problem is you don't know which guy that is. You know what I mean? And that's just the way New England's been for years and years. But with, like I tell you guys, we watch the tape, you know what I mean? We watch film on these guys, and I am very impressed with the way Dion Lewis is playing. If Dion Lewis comes into this game this week and has a big game, I want to say they're going to give him, 12 to 15 carries. If they give him 12 to 15 carries and just let him play, I honestly think they're not going to have any choice but to start playing him every week as that guy, because he's just too talented to keep off the field. I don't think they want to give him 20 touches because we all know he's kind of frail. He's a little bit brittle, but if he's going to be a 12 to 15 carry guy every single week, he's the guy that I want in New England. And, I think he'll show and give production, especially in this matchup with the Falcons. So, like Dion Lewis this week, I have him ranked at 24.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Dion Lewis as well. We talked about him a little the other day. And, He's a guy who a couple years ago was a stud until he tore his ACL. And, definitely Dion Lewis could be a nice play this week. That's pretty much it for me. Nothing really. I guess one guy I will say that I'm going to keep my eye on this week, coming out of the bye week, is Joe Mixon. I want to see if they start to lean on him a little more and kind of cut the other guys out now. It's like I said, you draft a guy in the second round. I think it's time to just kind of give him the reins. I mean, obviously, Jermaine Hill and Gio Bernard, that combo has been productive for a couple years. But if you draft a guy in the second round, a running back in the second round, you're drafting him to be that guy, similar to what Dalvin Cook was drafted as. And I think it's time that Mixon kind of steps into that role of lead back. So I want to see if Cincinnati plans on doing that coming out of bye week this week.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so we'll go over our wide receiver ranks. So I have Julio at 1 this week. I have Green at 2. I have Antonio Brown at 3. I marked Antonio Brown because I want to talk about him. But I told you guys I wasn't going to put him out of my top 3 the rest of the season. But anyway, I have Dez Bryant at number 4. I have Michael Thomas at 5. I have Jordy Nelson at 6. I have Mike Evans at 7. I have Chris Hogan at 8. I have Alshon Jeffrey at 9. I have Brandon Cooks at 10. I got Jarvis Landry at 11. Michael Crabtree at 12. Adam Thielen at 13. I have Larry Fitzgerald at 14. I have Amari Cooper at 15. I have Doug Baldwin at 16. I have Pierre Garçon at 17. I have Demaryius Thomas at 18. I have Mohamed Sanu at 19. I have Tyreek Hill at 20. I have Devontae Adams at 21. I have Terrell Pryor at 22. I have Amendola at 23. I have Rashard Matthews at 24. I have Marquise Lee at 25. I have Deshaun Jackson at 26. I have T.Y. Hilton at 27. I have Devin Funchess at 28. Martavius Bryant at 29. John Brown at 30. I got Willie Snead at 31. I have Woods at 32. I have Ricardo Lewis at 33. I have Alan Hearns at 34. I have Eric Decker at 35. I have Benny Fowler at 36. And I also put Nelson Aguilar at 36 also because I couldn't figure out which guy I liked better this week. So I think I like Aguilar a little bit better, but Fowler has a big opportunity this week to get a lot of catches.
Okay. All right. I have Michael Thomas. I have at number 1. Like I said, this was kind of pre-weather report, so that could change, but I still think that he has a big game. Mike Evans at number 2. Julio Jones, number 3. Antonio Brown, number 4. I have Dez Bryant, number 5. Larry Fitz, number 6. A.J. Green, number 7. Demaryius Thomas, number 8. Chris Hogan, number 9. Brandon Cooks, number 10. Alshon Jeffrey, number 11. I had Michael Crabtree, number 12. Jordy Nelson, number 13. Jarvis Landry, number 14. Adam Thielen, 15. Pierre Garçon, 16. Amari Cooper at 17. Keenan Allen at 18. Doug Baldwin at 19. Rashard Matthews at 20. T.Y. Hilton, 21. Devontae Adams, 22. Devin Funchess, 23. Mohamed Sanu, 24. I have Danny Amendola, 27. Deshaun Jackson, 28. Terrell Pryor, 29. Alan Hearns at 30. Sterling Shepard, 31. Willie Snead, 32. John Brown, 33. Jeremy Maclin, 34. Eric Decker, 35. And Jermaine Kearse, 36. There you go. I guess the one guy I'll start off with talking about is Michael Thomas. So, he's my number 1 guy. Green Bay's corners are basically shredded right now. They're all hurt. The top 4 guys are hurt. Who knows? Steve talked about the weather. We've talked about the weather these past 5 minutes. And, it's supposed to be ugly. But, I don't think that affects Drew Brees too much. Drew Brees seems to be, he's one of the best quarterbacks ever. So I think with the situation at cornerback for Green Bay, the fact that these two really didn't connect, they both kind of were low last week because of the fact that they got up so much with the defense scoring so many touchdowns. I think this week they rebound fantasy-wise, and I think that Michael Thomas is the number one receiver.
I hear that. I still like Michael Thomas here. I mean, I don't want you guys to think, because we're saying that it's going to rain there, that it's going to, completely wash out Drew Brees or Michael Thomas. Yeah. That's not what we're saying at all. What I'm saying is, it downgrades them a little bit. I have Brees at 3. I might drop him behind Kirk Cousins at 5. So, they would get bumped up. Prescott and Cousins would get bumped up, and Brees would move to 5, and Prescott would be 3, and Cousins would be 4 for me, really. So, he's still a top 5 play. Michael Thomas might move down. I might move him down behind, let's say, Chris Hogan, who I have at 8. So he might be like 9 for me, above Alshon Jeffrey. But still number one guys, that you're playing definitely. No question you're playing those guys. But the guys I want to talk about, first I want to talk about Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown's track record against Cleveland is really bad. He just does not play really good against Cincinnati, but I can't in good conscience rank him any lower than 3 any further. The other day, I believe it was last week or the week before. Yeah, it was the week before. I ranked him at, I believe, like 11 or something like that. Just outside of, just like on the cusp of being a wide receiver 1 and a wide receiver 2. Not against Jacksonville. And the reason I did that was not because I thought Jacksonville would be able to stop him. It was just because I thought Martavis Bryant would get more involved. And, if Martavis, when he seems to have really big games, Antonio Brown doesn't have really big games. He has okay games, 8 catches for 80 yards, but he doesn't have those 150-yard games that he had that day. So, I just, against Cincinnati, they play him really tough. He always seems to be really low in yards, maybe like 40, 50 yards and, 4 or 5 catches. So, I can see that trend continuing, but I'm not going to rank him any lower than 3 anymore.
Yeah, I have him at 4 for that very same reason. Cincinnati always plays them well. They for some reason they kind of, I think, have the idea of the Pittsburgh offense and know how to contain it. And usually those games are, pretty much a slugfest, So, I agree. I think Antonio Brown, obviously he's still, top 5 play every week, but, this week may be a little bit down. The next guy I'm going to talk about is Alshon Jeffrey. I talked a little bit about it when we did our daily podcast the other day. I had him in with the daily lineup. I think that me personally, I don't think either quarterback for Washington is going to play. And I think that that's going to open things up for Jeffrey to have his first big game as an Eagle. He's scored some touchdowns. He's had his game, kind of the 5 for 50 games. We haven't seen an 8 for 120 and, a touchdown or 2 touchdowns from Alshon Jeffrey. At least not yet. I think this is the week where he could get that off, especially if Norman and Breeland are not playing. Me personally, I don't expect them to. And even if Josh Norman plays, he's coming off a rib and lung injury. He's not going to be 100%. He's still not. He's going to be out of game shape a little bit. He's going to have to still get his legs under him. So, I like Alshon Jeffrey a lot this week, and I think that Monday night he could put on a show. Because of the fact that there's nobody out there that's really going to be able to guard him.
I hear that. I agree. I have Jeffrey at 9, so I definitely agree. My next guy I want to talk about is Chris Hogan. I have Chris Hogan at 8. Chris Hogan, it might be the most disrespected fantasy wide receiver in a very long time. The guy does nothing but score touchdowns. He's
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's constantly scoring touchdowns. He's constantly catching at least, I'll go over his stats real quick, but he's constantly just going off for your team every single week, and he's, I'll look at other people's ranks just to see like kind of where they have him, and he just constantly gets disrespected. He's like almost never in the top 10, and I don't really understand it personally. I think he just, he honestly, other than last week where he went 1 for 19, really he's been the most consistent fantasy player almost this season. So, you plug him in and he's scoring you points every single week. So I'm just going to go over his numbers real quick. Week 1 against KC, that game was just crazy. There was 3 touchdowns from Gillisley. It was one of those crazy games, but he was 1 for 8. Then he was 5 for 78 and a touchdown, 4 for 68 and 2 touchdowns. 5 for 60 and a touchdown, 8 for 74 and a touchdown. The guy has just been killing it for your fantasy team, and I don't understand why he's not ranked in the top, 10 or 12 in everyone's ranks, honestly. Going up against Atlanta, he's not going to see their best cover corner. You know what I mean? That's got to go to Cooks. So, Chris Hogan is always going to see number 2 corners and, playing the slot and maybe see slot corners, and he just eats them up. So, I see him going for, I'm going to say 6 for 70 and a touchdown this week. I'm calling it for Chris Hogan.
I like that. I think I have him in my top 10 as well. We talked about this a little bit, maybe I think 3 weeks ago. When we brought him up on the Sell High portion of our podcast, or our Sell High episode, and me, I was like, he definitely was a Sell High candidate. I just didn't want to sell him high because I saw what he was doing as far as touchdowns. When you're scoring touchdowns like that, you're so valuable in fantasy because, 6 points right off for one play is just, maybe even more than that because you're getting the catch and the yardage. So, at least maybe 8 points. It's so valuable off of one play. And when guys are scoring touchdowns at the rate that he's scoring them, that's definitely somebody I want on my team. Next guy I want to talk about this week is Pierre Garçon. I love Pierre Garçon this week. Daily, I didn't bring him up the other day because I wasn't really thinking about it until I actually did my rankings. And when I saw it, I was like, man, I love Pierre Garçon this week. Dallas has nobody that can defend, no cornerback that is actually that very good, in my personal opinion. And this guy is the X receiver in Kyle Shanahan's offense. That means he is the number 1 guy that's going to get the majority of targets on that team. They almost force feed the X receiver the ball in that offense. And I can honestly see Pierre Garçon having like a similar to what I said with Alshon Jeffrey, where it could be like an 8 for 120 and a touchdown. I can see that kind of game from Pierre Garçon because I think that they're going to have to throw the ball in order to keep up with Dallas. And on top of that, I don't think Dallas has anybody that can really stick anybody. So I love Pierre Garçon this week. I think I have him at maybe number 15. He actually may even be higher if I actually thought about it. I actually would probably move him 1 spot ahead of Adam Thielen. So he'd be right behind Jarvis Landry for me. I believe that would be the number 15 receiver on my list. I love Pierre Garçon this week.
I hear that. So we're actually going to have to cut it short today, guys. But there's one more guy I want to talk about, and Kev will give you guys one more guy he wants to talk about. But Ricardo Lewis is really the last guy I want to talk about. There's a couple other guys I marked down here, Pryor and Rashard Matthews. But Ricardo Lewis, I said this a couple weeks ago to you guys about, I believe it was the Texans. And when they were going up against Tennessee, and I'm going to pull up the numbers here real quick. But Ricardo Lewis, the Titans give up the most points to number 1 tight ends in the whole league. So if you have, a number 1 wide receiver going up against the Titans, you definitely want to play them. I think last week was the first week where a number 1, who was T.Y. Hilton, didn't score more than, I think, 15 fantasy points against them, which is really crazy if you think about it. DeAndre Hopkins was who I was talking about, and he went for 10 for 107 and a touchdown against them the week that I was telling you guys that. So Ricardo Lewis is a cheap option in DFS that I've been telling you guys to play this week. And if he gets 7 targets like he's been getting and possibly more, because I think Tennessee is going to win this game by a lot. Let's say he gets 10 targets this week. I definitely see him going for, possibly, 50, 60, 70 yards and a touchdown. And I like that upside. So, if you have Ricardo Lewis and you need you need a wide receiver who could help you because you're really hurting, I would take the upside of Lewis this week.
Definitely a solid gamble, or risk in daily fantasy. You know what I mean? If he's that cheap and his prices
yeah, he's 45. He's the minimum on FanDuel. He's 4,500 on FanDuel.
Yeah, that's for a guy who could possibly get a lot of targets and create some production for you. Like Steve said, he's been getting the targets, so that's a good daily fantasy play.
Yeah, he really only needs 13 points to pay off for you guys. So 13 points in daily. If he gets you, a touchdown, he basically is going to pay off for you no matter what. So I can see that happening.
Exactly. And I guess the last guy I'm going to get into is Devin Funchess. I am starting to really come around on Devin Funchess. Let me pull this up real fast. I should have pulled this up while you were talking, Steve.
No, it's no problem.
Apologize, but
off the top of my head, real quick,
Devin Funchess over the last 4 weeks, pretty much since Greg Olsen got hurt. Not so much in the Bills game, but over the last 4 weeks, he has 10 targets in Week 3 against New Orleans, 9 targets in Week 4 against New England, 8 targets in Week 5 against Detroit, and 9 targets last week against Philly. If he's getting this many targets, I just love Devin Funchess. I'm coming around on Devin Funchess. I shouldn't say love, but I'm coming around on Devin Funchess as a football player. He seems like he's starting to produce a little bit more. Last week they kind of got stuffed. The Philly defense kind of just stuffed somehow. Really stuffed them real last week. But the week before that, he had 7 catches out of 8 targets. The week before that, it was 7 out of 9. I think Devin Funchess is going to be a solid second option, maybe even the first option for Cam Newton right now. With
Kelvin
Greg
Benjamin.
Olsen hurt. Well, with Greg Olsen hurt, Kelvin Benjamin's also questionable.
Yeah.
Kelvin Benjamin had 13 targets last week, 9 for 99. But before that, he had 6, 4, and 2. And he's, like I said, he's still questionable. So I love Devin Funchess as far as I like Devin Funchess going forward, as long as he's going to continue to get those kind of targets.
I hear that. So that is our show for today, guys. Check out our lineups. We have the other podcast, Thursday podcast of the rest of our lineups, quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses. So, hopefully that helps you guys out to figure up your lineups this week. And good luck, everybody. And have a nice weekend. Enjoy football.
Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you next week for, our waiver wires and all that on Tuesday.
All right, everybody. Peace out.